done for me lately? It's coons. What have y'all done for us lately? And if there's no answer, the only thing we owe them.
Hey, good evening. Welcome. Welcome. It is Tuesday night. Tuesday night is, it's a little rough night for me. I'm a little tired, but we're going to get through this. Um, Maybe Chief Mimi is going to bring all that energy and she could transform it over to me and Sister Azim. So, how are you guys doing? How are you ladies doing tonight?
Well, for me, I'm in Missouri, St. Louis, and we were hit pretty bad. So I've had very little sleep since Friday because we've had continuous severe storms and possible tornadoes
Yeah.
around us, if not right on top of us.
Yeah.
Sister, have we ever done a show and you wasn't in Missouri?
Mm,
Always in Missouri. You going to tell us you're in Missouri tonight?
well, there's a lot of people who don't really know where I live. You get a new audience every day. So
Now they all know, even serial killers.
that's a good thing. You can come right here and get me.
I live in Missouri too. You can look for me there.
So we are still under severe weather. And if you see me disappear, it's because I need to go take care of that self preservation. But I'm hoping nothing will happen while we're on tonight. But we're going to talk about law. We haven't stopped talking about that. And it's very clear that you need to know what's going on with law. Remember, law is absolute in the respect that it's dealing with the properties and not properties like ownership, but your principles, your core principles. They can't be changed. Law stands on its principle, its core principles: divine law, organic law, natural law, the law of peace. Constitutional law also represents that. And Chief Mimi is going to go over that. She's going to go back over and finish up what the 14th Amendment is about and how it directly affects us, people of color, melanated skinned people.
Yeah.
From there,
So, Chief
Am I?
Mimi,
Uh,
yeah, it's
okay.
it's on you now.
Okay. I'm
So,
gonna go ahead.
so you were telling us 2 weeks ago, and would you like to continue? Like I didn't mean to disturb you, like Sister Azima said.
That's okay. Um, yeah, I'm just gonna always reiterate what I did last time, and we of course what we're trying to do here is build a foundation um, for you, and how important knowing the law is, because without that foundation, a lot of things aren't going to make sense. Like, we don't understand why people, Trump is, I mean, everybody's upset about Trump's 14th Amendment issues, his executive law that I guess includes that somehow. And so we talked last week or week before last about the 14th Amendment and how it does not apply to us, that it's whites, free whites, and persons who are in prison for a term of years. And also it does talks about slaves, which we also showed you that the word slave actually originates from the word Slavs, and then we showed you how they were the ones who were imprisoned mostly. So we know that during the time of constructing the colonies, they were penal colonies. And so a lot of people don't know that, and that's one of the things they don't put in in your school books, because they want to fool you, make you think that it was you that was the slave. Now, that does not say that there weren't Africans who weren't slave, but that's or I should say, they weren't really slaves. They were what you would call in servitude. And they had a very hard servitude and hard labor, but they were brought over here by their own relatives and others who they were indebted to. So we're going to talk about that another time. But I also want to add to you that I always speak from the Constitution, the United States Constitution, that was ratified, I think it was 1787. I have to go back and look. But sometimes people don't know there was the first Constitution reads similar but somewhat different. But I don't read from that Constitution. I read from the one that's in place now. And the reason why I do is because that one was written by our people. As I also showed you the last time we were here, they tell you, we contributed. That was our contribution to them, because they didn't know how to write a constitution, and they were having problems with it. And also, they had to have some form of governing themselves in order for us to allow them to come up on our lands. And this is why they were trying to, appease us with it. And most times you don't hear them talk about that. You will hear them say, oh, they framed the Constitution, or they adopted the Constitution, but you don't see them say, we wrote the Constitution. You will find people who say, well, the forefathers wrote it, but you won't see the government saying that, because it's not true. So I'm going to go into another phase of the government where Donald Trump, let me pull it up. It's the fact sheet. You could pull the fact sheet up. You see that one? That's from, yeah. I'm going to go from there, because that one, we're going to show you how, come on, I can't even open it. Come on, give me a break. Okay, so Trump is accused of, from what I've heard, trying to remove the federal government. The reason why I think it's important for you I'm pulling up a lot of stuff that Trump talked about, is because people don't understand why what he's doing actually does comport with the United States Constitution. I tried to show you that with the 14th Amendment. So now I want to try to show you where Trump is trying to eliminate a lot of ensuring the government serves the American people rather than itself, with which he writes up here. I'm going to read it to you. Eliminating inefficiency and bureaucracy. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed an executive order to eliminate the Federal Executive Institute, a government program purportedly designed to provide bureaucratic leadership training. The order directs the Office of Personnel Management to take all necessary steps to terminate the Federal Executive Institute and revokes the appropriate documents. This is, as it says, ensuring every tax dollar works for the American people. Now, remember, taxation is very important because that's how they collect revenue and that's how they pay off the national debt. I do believe that's how they pay off the national debt. So when you got a lot of bureaucracy that's taking money, as they have found, that's going to things that don't really comport with the Constitution, they need to clean that up um, if we're going to follow the Constitution. And what we have found that codes, statutes, and policies are written by the federal government. Acts are written by the federal government. And if they do not comport with the Constitution, then they're invalid. So let's see. It also reads the Federal Executive Institute was created by the Johnson administration more than 50 years ago to provide leadership training to government bureaucrats. And we always say, we hate bureaucracy. So why are we complaining when this man is saying, let's cut that down or let's get rid of it? It's bureaucracy that keeps us from winning. So the bureaucratic leadership over the past half century has enlarged and entrenched Washington, D.C.'s managerial class, a bloated system far removed from the needs of American families. New leadership is needed. So I'm not going to belabor that one too much. So I'm going to go to what I want us to get started with. So we're going to look at the power of the laws. And we talked last year, we said there was a trinity of laws that our Confederacy is governed by, and that is the universal laws, our great law of peace, and the United States Constitution. So we're going to look at the power of these laws. And it's going to take you to why you should understand. I'm going to take you to how to understand what Trump is doing. Things are not as they seem in the United States in history, because sometimes history disguises itself as American history when it's really United States history. And we find a lot there is an interplay between the two. And we just read that with Donald Trump. He's attributing this work that he's doing to Americans, but that would be Indians, because the United States citizens are not American, and we are not Americans. And I think we went over that 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you'll understand. Stay in the understanding of what we're doing. So most often, United States leaders, including Trump, they speak, with what we call a forked tongue, because if you're making people believe who are citizens of the United States that they are Americans, this is another reason why they have trouble with the Constitution, why they have trouble standing in court, because they know you're not Americans. Okay. So the United States and America are one. People believe that the United States and America are operating under one government that has plenary power throughout both. And so that is not true. Let's look at the definition of plenary power. In its legal definition, it refers to complete, absolute, unqualified power to act on a particular matter with no limitations or conditions attached. It is the highest form of authority under the law, but plenary power is unqualified. The Constitution for the United States of America does not give plenary power in the absolute sense to any branch of the government. And here's an example. It does grant only enumerated powers, right? That's not covered in absolute for every other part of the Constitution. It's only for enumerated powers. So they can delegate, but they can't inherit. They can are limited to this power It is not open-ended. It's strictly to that. It's severable, meaning each is distinct. And we talked about distinction as well. While they can look the same, they can feel the same, but they are distinct in every way and have different roles and power. So in the constitutional law, it binds all branches of government. It is a compact. Notice, not a contract like some people think. The contract is with the citizens. The compact is written to protect the people and its government, but it's also a compact with Indians to protect them. That's why Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 is in the United States Constitution. And I'm going to show you later on how that works for our people. Federal law, which is what we want to talk about, binds federal agencies, courts, citizens within the scope of the constitutional delegation. These are statutes, statutory. All statutes, codes, and policies are federal creations. So when Trump says we're returning to the Constitution, on my tongue, sorry. We're returning to the Constitution. This is what he means by that. We're going to cut down some of this federal bureaucracy so that people can live under the law, which protects them. Federal creations are inferior in authority to the Constitution, which is the only source of delegated power. So no agency or department or actor may enforce codes or policies in contradiction to the Constitution. I'll employ everyone to go and pull up videos by, what's his name? Justice Scalia. He was adamant about the laws, and they would ask him questions like, well, what if we did this and that? He constantly said to them, you can call it a law if you want to, but if it does not comport with the United States Constitution, it is invalid. Okay, it's invalid, and you need to know that in every aspect of your life. Let me give an example. So what we find that happens often in textbooks and other forms of media, they tell us stories that lead us to believe that the federal law supersedes state law, as if federal law is the law of the land or is a higher authority. Well, that's not true. And the reason, we're going to see why that's not true. Because the Constitution for the United States of America was ratified as the law of the land in 1788, when the ninth state of New Hampshire gave its affirmative vote, thereby meeting the requirements of Article 7, which specific and ratified by 9 states would be sufficient to establish the Constitution between the states. And so that's how they got ratified. So the constitutional law is the absolute, and only thing they can do is make amendments to it. Me and Azima, we were talking one day about the difference in the Constitution and the amendments, and I likened it to a dress that everybody got together and said, this dress is the dress of all dresses. This is a dress that we're going to wear for the next 6 months when we go to these meetings. It has all the right pockets, it has all the right buttons, and it has all the right zippers, and it works for us perfectly. But then somebody comes along and say, hey, you know what? It's not exactly working for us. So we want to change the Constitution, but they can't change it because it is a law. But the Constitution puts it in there that they can make amendments. So an amendment is like this. Okay, I need a pocket on the sleeve. They might amend it. You can't remove the dress. You can't remove any of the other things to go with the dress, but you can put a pocket on here. But we can also take that pocket off. This is why they're afraid of Trump, because he knows what can be removed and what cannot. You have to know. I think it was it last week when we talked about the 14th Amendment was never
Ratified.
officially ratified.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
this is what frightens them because they know if it was never officially ratified, he can remove it because it's officially not there. Does that make sense?
It's an amendment.
Huh?
It's an amendment. It
It's
tells you it's an amendment in the wording, right? It's an
right.
amendment.
It's an
It's
amendment.
it's an addition that's not as we would say law.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Although they want to say it is, but it is removable. And of course, if here's another thing I looked into. It takes a lot to remove an amendment. A lot.
So let me ask you, Chief Mimi, because we when you mentioned Justice Scalia, he was, and a lot of the justices with their background have specialties, but Justice Scalia, his specialty was constitutional law.
Mm-hmm.
And when you mention um, the fear of, okay, now SCOTUS has decided to, and I keep bringing it up. I don't know why it's not catching on to a lot of people about SCOTUS deciding to take this birthright citizenship case, and the fear of many people on the right and the left, whether you're into politics or not, the fear of what could happen from the case and the ramifications, and they even trying to check SCOTUS's temperature and think that they're going to differ on the ruling. Um, when you talk about that and you explain it, it has never been ratified, and the
Officially.
case has never been, yeah, officially, and the case has never been brought in front of SCOTUS
Yeah.
until now, until they decide to take the case. What do you know from what you study and what you believe to be true? What do you think? Not think, but what do you see how the ramifications is going to change the country? Because I've been saying it's going to change the country. Explain from your understanding how it could change and reshape the country going forward.
Okay, it can. And it goes right back to where I first started. When the 14th Amendment was put into place, the citizens of the United States were white. They were free whites and those who were in service for a term of years, those who went to prison. And by the way, um, I can't think of that young man that does DNA on people, and he brought this white woman in, an actress, and he looked up her family, and he said, "Look, I really hate to tell you this, but we found that your people were here, and they were brought here as prisoners." Well, yeah, they've been lying to you. Just about all white people's ancestors was brought here as prisoners. They were either keepers of the prison or the prisoners. And they worked the prisons. They worked the territories where the prisoners were. What were you going to ask me? I see
Can
your
I
lips perched.
can I say something
Yeah.
right quick? And I hope to bring this point home. Before the 13 colonies got here, there were more than 13 million people living here,
Mhm.
and they look like Chief Mimi. I want you to let that sink in. That's imperative. So before the 13 colonies got here, you had 13 million people living here looking like Chief Mimi.
Mhm.
Okay. So then when the 13 colonies came, they brought feudal law. Feudal is the law of the queen and kings of the country they're coming from, which migrated to the word federal. Once Trump goes under constitutional law, he removes feudalism. And
Mhm.
everybody will realize that your only 13 colonies is what? West Virginia, all those places along the East Coast.
Mhm.
And you can funnel everybody out back to France, Spain, England, Wales, Ireland, because they are violating the agreement that the 13 colonies had with the 13 million indigenous people
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And they can they can say, no, you can't be on the reservation anymore because the reservation was for the 13 colonists
Yes.
and not for the 13 million people that lived here.
That's right.
Okay.
So,
So I just
so let
wanted
me ask you, that is, and that brings up the point that we had mentioned 2 weeks ago. And I might have confused Chief Mimi with the way I worded it, because most of us, like through school, through books, we were taught that the reservations were for the indigenous people
Mm-hmm.
and not
They
for,
called them Indian reservations.
yeah, and not for the the criminals that was sent over here, right? So originally, the reservations were set up. Okay, this is what we're gonna give y'all. We're gonna give y'all a piece of land to do what y'all need to do, and we basically have the 13 million people have the country. We have the rest of the land. Okay, that's very important. That's interesting.
That's very important. As a matter of fact, it's just so much to know.
So Chief Mimi, back to the 14th Amendment, if you don't mind me asking.
No,
So finish explaining how this case, and like Sister Azima just explained, like, listen, if they go back to constitutional law, if we're gonna really make constitutional law the law of the land and it's gonna wipe away the federal law, how that will in turn affect and how people scared they're gonna get getting shipped up out of here.
because that's what's going to happen. So, I mean, I'm just going to be blunt. And this is why Donald Trump told African Americans, y'all better start looking at your genealogy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because he probably doesn't want to deport any of us out here. But if we want to be lazy and continue to believe that we're African Americans, which by the standards of the OMB, Office of Management and Budget,
Mm-hmm.
it is neither anthropological nor scientific. The term Native American is neither anthropological nor scientific. And I said this before. Where is Native American land? People come from somewhere, and that somewhere is a land.
Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as a Latino land. And here's why I believe that the United States keeps mingling itself with America, because they really don't have a land to live on, a land to stand on. And let's look at why. Because Europe, at the time that this was going on, I think it was King James. Was it King James? He was the one that's sending them over here. They were these people who were ruling Europe at that time look like you, Quentin.
Mm-hmm. They look like us.
So
That's
where
how
do they go?
King James Bible. King James modified the Bible. He's a black man.
He's a black man.
And Elizabeth the First was black.
And as they talk about Queen Charlotte,
Yep.
she was a Moor. And go ahead.
So let me ask. This
Beethoven. They were all black.
this is interesting.
And Europe is named after Queen Europa.
Who was?
Okay, she was a black woman.
Oh, look at the pictures. Look at the pictures that England and Britain has of them in their library. Some of them is black as heart. Some of them are brown, and some of them have nappy hair. Some of them have short hair. But I guarantee you, they don't have pointed noses, thin lips, and rosy cheeks.
So let me ask you: is this an intentional thing that President Trump is doing? Is he doing this intentionally, or this is something that this is something, a road he's going down where he could not understand the consequences of what he's doing, opening up, like what we say, Pandora's box?
He understands the consequences.
He was picked for this. We talked about that. He was picked for this.
Yep.
He understood the consequences. Yep. This, black folks, you all been on your knees praying to Jesus. Oh, we got to have a change. Can't be like this. So now that the change is coming, you're fighting it.
They're frightened of it.
Right. You're afraid of it because you don't really know who you are and what you are about.
And not only that, you don't know the law. Everybody should know the law. You live in, if you're a citizen of the United States, you should know the law. You should be able to stand before them and say, that doesn't comport with the United States Constitution. You should be able to know if your issues are an Article 3 issue. You should be able to know that. This fringes upon my constitutional rights. Now, Indians don't have constitutional rights. Indian is protected by things written in the Constitution, because the Constitution was not written to govern Indians. We have our own laws to govern Indians. And our laws, as we shared with you, I think a couple of weeks ago, our laws, as I think it was was it George Washington? George Washington has said, our laws have subsisted for hundreds, maybe even millions of years.
Right.
So then, here's what I'm saying. They tell on themselves. Okay, well, George Washington, if our laws have existed that long, because you explained to Native Americans who said they came here 20,000 years ago. I'll repeat that for those who didn't get it. If our laws have existed for millions of years, how does a people come here who look like you and say that they are the original people, or the first people, meaning if there was a first people, there was a second people, and maybe they were first in the United States, but they certainly weren't first in America. And if our laws have subsisted that long, how is it a people who say they farmed the desert for 20,000 years, you didn't know there was good food on this planet outside the desert? I'm just saying. This is for entertainment purposes only. Get your panties in a bunch.
You got the jokes tonight. Oh man. What's so funny, Sister Isaiah? She just started already, huh?
Yeah, because I sent her something earlier where this.
Yeah.
I sent it to you too. It was funny. Because he kept sitting there and the white man says, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" He says, "I understand your language clearly." And I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, "Well, the governor over here really wants to take your land and we're going to take care of you." He said, "Why?" And then he asked him, "Did you buy the land? Did you trade? Did you have trade for the land?" And the guy said, "No." He said, "Well, I like the way I'm living. I don't want."
Right. We don't need you to show us anything. I mean, think about it. You came over here, didn't know anything about the land. As a matter of fact, I think you came to this class, and then I'm going to answer your question. I think you came to the class where we were talking about the Northwest Ordinance, and in that, one of the things that they were concerned about is during colonization, sometimes they would step outside their bounds. Okay, ma, could you bring me some tissue, please? All right. They would step outside their bounds and find out a whole colony was missing. So no, you did not win this by conquest.
No.
Let me ask you, Chief, maybe, because back to the SCOTUS thing, right? Listen to what you've been telling me and what I already know on how the ruling could be monumental. I don't think they're gonna go too far. I think they're gonna realize that the language that they're going to use is very vague, I think. This is my personal opinion now.
Who are you speaking of?
SCOTUS.
Okay.
I don't think they really want to go too far into the 14th Amendment. I think they're going to try to limit everything that was asked and stick strictly to the question that is before the, as they say, before the court. Because like you said and you explained, if they go too far, and then all you need is one justice, or you get Justice Roberts to say, like, look, this never been ratified.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the problem's going to
not official.
Really
I always say official.
Do you think so? Because I'm thinking, look at who Trump's putting on the Supreme Court. All of them have knowledge of constitutional law.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk. Let me just jump over here and you can come back. People say Democracy. Look up the definition of democracy. Democracy is to be ruled by the majority,
Mob.
whether the people know what they're doing or not.
Yeah.
It's mob rule.
It's mob.
So a democracy is mob rule. That's why the United States went everywhere around the world to have mob rule. You introduce them to democracy. And in democracy, you can get fascism and all these other things. But democracy is ruled by the majority, good, bad, and different.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be careful about what you're seeing. Open your eyes, people, because right now you're seeing these black politicians having a meltdown. Okay. And I'm
But
just
you
going
want to
to
know
say,
why? Because
let
a
me,
lot of them are descendants of the Africans who were brought here as slaves.
slaves. And that's why they're having a meltdown.
Yeah. And they
And
want
if
your
you,
children, they're convincing your children that, well, this is about you. Maybe not. If you need to, he said, you need to go in and start looking at your genealogy. If he's saying that to you, that should tell you something. You should be on that like immediately. Like as soon as we hang up from this podcast, you should be immediately in your date book good tomorrow, 8 a.m. genealogy. That's where you should be. Because he's definitely got a plan. Because of these, let me tell you something that you have to realize as truth. And there's a reason why they used the term dirty Moors. They were highly, I don't have documents for that because I didn't know we were going to go there, but I can find them for you. They were highly involved in what they call human trafficking. The royals in Europe and the Africans of, they were Muslims. And they were Moors. They were trading these white people back and forth. Sex slavery. Oh geez, see, I don't have it in front of me. But they were human trafficking. Anything you can think of that was being done in human trafficking, that's what they were doing. We rescued them from that. And said, if you want to have them come over here and pay off your debt, that was their debt to you in Britain, then there has to be a law that protects them. We did that. We wrote that. I told this to Pomine. And she said, well, how come we don't have any documents? I said, well, we don't know where our documents are. We have to read their documents to find out and make sense of what we really did because they hid them. She said she went to this place and she had on her feathers and of course, and she was the Indian girl there. And she said this white woman ran up to her, older white woman, of course, and grabbed her and said, did you know that your people rescued us? She called me while she was there and said, oh my God, I didn't know that. I really didn't believe you. She said, this lady told me all the stuff Indians did for them. Yeah, we rescued them. We rescued them from being transported the way they were. The people, so to me, if I were in office and I knew that the very people who's ruling the Democratic Party right now are descendants of people who have my people in slavery, well, I'll let you think about it. But what you think about it? We have to distance ourselves from the ones who were committing these crimes against humanity because we're not humanity. We're not humans. But that's a whole nother story. And I'll let Azima tell you about that one because she knows more about that than I do. But we're not humans. So to answer your question that you asked me, I want to show you this. I should have sent this to you, but I wrote an article. And in this article, I talk about what you asked me. I'm going to go to the third paragraph. It says, during colonization, our American government allotted reserved lands to the United States. See, who was that land reserved to? Why wouldn't we reserve lands for us and say, come on over and have your way? And I'm going to send it to you next time because I have the documents that prove that. These allotted reserve lands that we allotted to the United States were supervised by Indian overseers who participated in trade on those same reservations with the European settlers. So Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3 of the United States Constitution excluded Indians from taxation and citizenship in the United States. Now think about that for a minute. They came here to collect revenue, but our copper color ASSs is in their territory because we don't have territories. Notice that when you read, doing the same thing they're doing, but they can't tax them and get revenue off of them. That's the issue now, and it has always been the issue that we were in their territory and they couldn't tax us. Where was I? Okay. This explains President Jackson's statement that the 30 years debate, he wanted to remove Indians from the United States settlements, and had ended. He was like, well, we got 30 years. He was like, we got to get them out of here because we can't even tax them. That's what this whole thing was about, the Indian Removal Act. It was removing us not off of our land, but out of their settlements. Y'all be listening to these Native Americans every time. Oh, they moved us off our land. Okay. But anyway,
so this is what this, like you brought it up. So this is basically the premise behind the Indian Removal Act.
Yes. And I wish I could pull up these documents that happened before you. That was their whole thing. We got to get them off our settlements because we can't tax them. And so they call it a trail of tears. But if you look at the documents that support what I'm talking about, and I have them, it says, so, some of them said, look, we don't want to leave. And so they stayed. And some of them became citizens under the United States. I'm not going to lie about that. Some of them did, but we don't know what happened to them. But once they become citizens of the United States.
What you mean you don't know what happened to them? You know what happened to them. They assimilated. They assimilated with them people.
Yes, but they weren't forcefully assimilated. They did it on their own. And we got to be clear about that. Mm-hmm. So you're right, they're assimilated, but I still don't know. I mean, somebody asked me, they said, what if they build an underground tunnel and, so that you can survive this catastrophic event? I don't want to be nowhere with a bunch of United people or you ruling the world under the United States. I'm sorry. I'll survive or die in the event.
So most people don't understand. Most people would be like, well, on the reservations, the Indians, they don't got to pay no taxes. No, they wasn't paying no taxes on the settlements.
Native Americans pay taxes.
Okay, yeah.
I have the documents.
Indians did not pay taxes on the settlements land, so they got pushed to what these people consider a reservation.
Yeah. The Indians were pushed to, I think they went some of them went to another reservation because that's what was their trade, trapping. They were traders. Mm-hmm. So yeah, or they either went to another reservation or they went.
Yeah, they make it seem like the Indians getting fat on the reservations. In all actuality, they were the indigenous people, the land. So
yeah. So they were getting.
It was theirs already. Yeah. So
let's be for real. I mean, let's be for real. Let's talk about this for real.
It's taught in a way where you would think that the Indians were the aggressors and the ones that was in the way, when the reality was the settlers couldn't tax them the way you explained, couldn't tax them because this was their land. So they basically pushed them.
They pushed them out.
Yeah, pushed them out.
Yeah, they had a vote, and they said, "Look, let's just vote. Let's just vote them out of here." Basically, any act that they make for Indians is against the law, whether they're on reserved lands or not. But a lot of the Indians decided that they would leave. They forced them out. That's true. I have documents to show how they forced them out. But this whole thing about, they were like suffering on this trail and dragging their babies behind them and blah, 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 and boo hoo. You read the documents, it'll tell you we gave them horses, we gave them food, we escorted them, we did this to them, we did that for them. Now, that's not to say that there wasn't any issues that happened, because there were, and I got that too. There are issues that happened, but there was some basic rules and laws in transporting these Indians, whereby the government was strict on, if you do anything to harm these Indians, there's a penalty to pay. Now, they did harm the Indians. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they did not go without harm, okay? Because just they didn't like the Indians. They didn't like them. And I understand that they didn't like them because they weren't paying taxes. It was against the law to pay taxes.
Or, you can't. Definitely, if you know that the land is yours, why would you be taxing yourself?
That's so
why
dumb.
would you allow yourself to be taxed? They were getting taxed by Europe, so they had to tax them each other.
They had to gather revenue to pay Britain off.
And then they had the Boston Tea Party.
Yeah. So anyway,
something else.
So this is what I wrote. 30 years prior to the president's statement, President Jackson's statement, there was a rebellion ensued by them, and where the United States unlawfully began to take census of Indians in the 1800s, because that also is part of the clause. You can't enumerate them. You can't take census of them. You can't tax them. And then there's a whole big definition of what tax is in the Constitution. And so they couldn't do any of this by law. I'm not saying they didn't do it, but they weren't supposed to do it. And so in that rebellion, they began to take it, and they found that Indians were still in control of 92% of their land. So this whole thing about, and this was in the 1800s. So this whole thing about, we lost so much land. They're not even talking about your land. They're talking about territories, period. So I'm going to ask the people, look up the difference between the territory and the lands. And if you can't, next time we have something, I'll explain it to you. So, okay, so this moved the federal government to pass the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which authorized Jackson to unlawfully purchase territorial land. Listen to that, territorial land for expansion. In other words, they were saying, we want to expand in our own territory, and you guys are in the way. We don't have territories.
So they were basically, and I know that you're going to explain this going down the road, because I'm about to say a word that's going to be, and I'm quite sure you got a lot of copies of it. So they were breaking a treaty.
I would say they were breaking the law.
I would say yes and no. Here's why I would say no.
Just I see when you said they was breaking the law.
They were breaking their law, and and they couldn't break the law. So what did they do? They wrote statutes, policies, and all this stuff, and used that as a means through trickery to enforce it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing they did was that the people who were brought here, quote unquote, as slaves, look like the indigenous people that were here. And so we do know that they would capture the Indians under statute, policy, codes, and laws and ship them to Haiti and hurt them and recondition them and bring them back as slaves, quote unquote. That is how they work. It is a lot of subterfuge, a lot of trickery. And remember now, you have criminals here under the guise of an esquire. And an esquire is the your legal representation of of nobility. So you had all these esquires, which were lawyers, here, and they would hire the criminal element to do what they need to do against the indigenous people and couple those that were slaves into it and then ship them off to a place where they can, what they call, break them and then bring them back and say, well, you're a slave. And they're like, I'm not a slave. I'm indigenous. It doesn't matter because they've used all of these tactics, kidnapping, raping, and all of that to get what they want. And so they violated their laws using trickery. And they still do it today. Remember when I told everybody, be careful about what you say? Remember I said a faggot was a bundle of sticks made you rich instead of a person that's gay? Mm-hmm. And so that's what they do. And so when you intertwine America, America is not the United States. It's Canada, United States, it's Nicaragua, Mexico, all the way to Brazil. These are the Americas.
Mm-hmm. And notice he's saying he's trying to buy all of those and bring them under the law.
The law, constitutional law. Mm-hmm. So before you all get panicky, go know the constitutional law.
Because they are America. Canada is America. Canada, the word Canada is their corporate, like the United States is the America's corporation. Canada is America, that part of the land, that's their corporation. All these are corporate names.
Now remember, Canada is under British rule. America, the colonies were under British rule.
Now, and I'm going to say this because what happened to Australia happened to them after us. They also did the same thing. The goodness of their heart, let's let them come over here so they can pay off their debt without being broken to bits. And then they turned on them. Mm-hmm. I do believe that Australia, which is a corporate name, is also America. I can't prove it yet, but I certainly believe it is because America covers at more than 3/4 of this planet. That much we know. That much we know. So anyway, from where was I? Okay, this moved the federal government to pass the Indian Removal Act of 1830, which authorized Jackson to unlawfully purchase territory land for expansion. Now, the reason why purchasing is bad, because if you look at the definition and the origin of the word purchase, and I'm just going to give you the short definition. If somebody wants to bring it up, the origin of it, you will find that means you raped, pillaged, lied, and everything else to get that land. And that's why purchasing is against the law. This act set the precedent to our homelessness, as many were unlawfully expelled from settlements and involuntarily displaced due to Jackson's conflated idea, now listen to this, that the Constitution was a mere experiment, and I have the document that shows it, and our lands could be purchased, even though they know it could not. They didn't have to buy their lots. It was allotted to them. That's where the word lots come from. Now let's look at the size of a lot. So when people say, oh, they took millions of land from us, there was no lot. There was millions of land. These were small towns. And of course, they expanded where they did I'm not going to belabor that. But anyway, from 1830 to 1920, the federal government consistently, and here we are about the federal government, constructed ill-conceived policies in an effort to tax our people and subjugate our lands. One such effort was the Indian Citizenship Act. Now, if you don't know about the Indian Citizenship Act, I'm bring that up. I'm gonna read it to you. Maybe he can bring it up. And it says, this act, it's kind of small. Hold on. It's just this all it said. To an act to authorize the Secretary of the Interior to issue certificates of citizenship to Indians. Do you know how many Indians I've come across and say, hey, was your, what about your parents? They ain't got no certificates saying they were citizens. We didn't do that. It was a few, I will not lie. But for the most part, we didn't want to be citizens. And he talks about that. Jackson in that letter says, these Indians will do anything to keep from being citizens of the United States. Yes, we would. Why would we want to let you control us when we're controlling you? That would be stupid. So it says, be it enacted by the Senate and the House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled, that all non-citizen Indians born within the territorial limits of the United States be they and hereby declared to be citizens. How you're going to go against the Constitution? Now think about that. It says Indians in the territorial limits of the United States. That would be the lands that was allotted to them. And they got you thinking, well, they just made us citizens all over America. No, they did not. Not by that act, they didn't. Of course, there was a way that they did it, but that wasn't it. To force assimilate all non-citizen Indians born within the U.S. territorial limits under their jurisdiction. Another effort was the Racial Integrity Act. Now, that's where the witchcraft was. In which the federal government authorized Walter.
Wait, what do you mean? What do you mean witchcraft? The boogeyman?
No. Okay, I'll put it this way. I call it witchcraft, but actually it was spell binding.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it was. Because they were creating spells and writing these acts. Those are spells. Because that's what you do. You spell it out. I saw a video the other day where there's this, I must use this term, school with young Black students. And on the day that the towers fell, the president was in that school. No yawning. I'm not boring, I hope. No. The president was at that school. Want to know what these children were saying? They were saying the words of what was coming on that tower.
Oh, I remember that, Jed.
Yes.
There. I remember that.
They were spelling it. They were using spell this and spell that.
Right. And he looked around because he knew. He got the notification. He continued on with the kids.
Yeah. They use us to create their spells. That's why I'm trying to tell people they need to know the law, because even with George Floyd, they used us to set up an altar. They used us.
Now you're cooking with grease now. Now you cooking with grease. You talking about the altar.
But not just with George Floyd, but with Sandra Bland, all of them. Because what did we do? We started putting totems where our people fell, who were murdered. We started putting up signs to let people know someone here died. Shoes, teddy bears, whatever. And what you're doing is that, like she's saying, you're making totems. Out of those totems, every time you go, you're going to invoke that person's name. Right. Remember when I told you you are nothing more than a frequency?
Yeah.
The more
what did you call it? A signal, a sigil, and what was that with the totems? What you call those?
Okay, when we were talking about signs, signals,
sigils, and then what you start to do, what you start to do is you start to go there, and then you make your own sacrifice. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna take my candle there that I lit, and then it becomes a it is part of a ritual, whether people realize it or not.
Mm-hmm. There's a ritual. And here's the thing. The ritual is every 4th of July, you will put some meat on the spit and you will celebrate this ritual of death where hundreds of thousands of people died. That is the ceremony. They keep us in ritual and ceremony, in death ceremonies. I talk a lot about death rituals. See, people think, oh, we're going to get a cauldron and we're going to put a hair of dog and eye of newt. Somebody urinated in it and put some feces in it and blah, blah, blah. Nah, baby, it's more simpler than that. They got your brain
locked down.
Hey, according, this is why they used to eat the copper tone people.
Yep.
Yes, they did. Our mummies.
Yes, they did.
Our people are.
Read The Delectable Negro.
Mm-hmm.
So now Chief Mimi trying to throw us to a curve. She ready to talk about something else now.
But that's true. That's exactly.
I'm way off topic now. I'm serious.
No,
I'm way off
all
topic.
of this is important.
Yeah, it's very important, and it's very, like you said, you actually have a hand in your own demise.
Yep.
If you're not aware of what's going on.
Participating. This is what we say in Indian talk. These niggas is participating in their own genocide.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we decided we're just gonna come out.
So let me ask you, Chief.
It gives us the right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, Chief Mimi. Wow, we don't went over a lot tonight, man. I don't know if I even got a question formulated right now. I'm just, you took us on an altar. You messed my thought up because I didn't know you were going to go there.
But you asked me the question.
Yeah.
And I try to answer questions with primary sources, and everything I read in here has a primary source that you can look up.
Let me ask you a question, because Sister Azima, I know what question to ask you exactly now. With understanding what the present president is doing, understanding the season that we're coming into, what would you recommend most of us that don't understand but see something going on, see something where you may say it's spiritual, wherever it's something different, it's a big change going on, it's a shift, so to say. What would you suggest that an individual does, and then how they should educate those who don't know or their families?
Two things. One, I want you to think about this. There's a video of, I think he's an old Irish man, and they ask him, why would he vote for Trump? Why are you so hell-bent on, breaking the immigration law? By the way, there's no such thing as an immigration law. We'll talk about that another time. That's all also spell work. Immigration laws don't comport with the United States Constitution. Trump knows that. That's why he can deport. Because believe me, if he deported Native Americans, if they were actually the Aborigines of this land, all they have to go to the United Nations. But the United Nations knows who the Indians are. They know who we are. The whole world knows who we are. But anyway, he answered them. They said, why would you support such a thing? He said, because no one wants to be the minority in this country. He said, whites are now the minority. Do you know what he meant by that? Y'all done brought all these people on here. They gonna whoop our behinds. We're the minority now. So we gotta get rid of them. And they was like, I was saying to myself, sir, I am not mad at you. I'm not mad at you.
It's interesting because a lot of people was upset with or didn't understand what Dr. Frances Cress Welsing was teaching when she was talking about the genetic survival. And they felt as though that she was a little off. Those of us who got what she was saying understood. And she was saying how everything is about genetic survival and what's going on because, we will no longer, we'll be here. We'll be here. We'll continue to be here.
Yeah.
Those copper, as Sister Azima tells me, copper tone people.
Copper
Yeah,
color.
we'll be here. But not
Yeah.
only that, the biggest thing is that no, and I know y'all are gonna say she's talking crazy, but even white people know. That's why they get suntans. If you want to be with God, you need to have color. And I don't mean that to be, I don't even know how to put it. The frequency that vibrates the greatest is as dark as Brother Quentin. That frequency always vibrates. There is nothing in the universe that doesn't vibrate, that doesn't have a frequency. And you will learn it. What you were supposed to learn spiritually was that you are an energy that vibrates. And as you vibrate and learn yourself, you will not be disorganized, in chaos, or in the dark. What you have been conditioned is that they gave you a third party person, Allah, Muhammad, and Jesus, that you must go through when the God force lives within you. It's not separate from you. But if you are coming from a place where you were created and then you're placed into a penal colony, because you've heard, what's that guy, Alex Jones, say, Earth is nothing more than a penal colony. Okay, he's telling you the truth, but like all white people, he's going to salt and pepper it the way he wants you to see it. If you're coming from Europe to the Americas and the 13 colonies, and you already know that you're descendants of some form of criminal activity, you're not looking for spiritual affirmation. So maybe your descendants aren't going to be like you, but you're going to teach them align yourself. Because think about it. Everybody in the world want to be people of color, but don't nobody want to be a person of color. We want to act like you. We want to be spirit. You even see white people singing gospel songs that sound like us. Okay. I heard an Asian girl sing a Whitney Houston song. Okay. From her, what was that? With Kevin Costner. I forgot the name of that movie. She was singing that song. And I was like, look at that. You got the Korean guys dancing like brothers, but they don't want to be black. You see what I'm saying? So everybody knows that in order to get to that spiritual place, you do have to be able to vibrate from within. The darker we are, the better we vibrate. And that is not to be, oh, I can't think of the woman's name, but white people didn't become white people until the 1800s. Before that, they were wherever they came from. And please go learn your history, learn you. Once I found out that my family was descendants of Anunnaki, that was a whole different mindset for me. And it took me a while to accept that. I don't run around and brag on it, but and I don't talk about it in a positive or negative way. But it is just something. Bodyguard, thank you. It is just something you need to know. Do what she says. Get up tomorrow morning at 8:00. You need to know your genealogy.
Because I'm telling you, something's coming. He's warning you. He's telling you. I really don't want to have to get rid of y'all, but that's up to you.
Right. And
that's like warning your children. I told you to clean up your room because if you don't, as soon as you're 18, I'm kicking you out. You don't believe it? You're 18, you get kicked out. They're telling you.
Right. So you have to know your history. Know thyself. Sia eka pata neturu. Know thyself. The universe knows you. You don't know you.
Look, I want to get to something. I know I can tell Quentin's about to shut this down because we'd be on here, what, 2 hours, and he's yawning and he's like,
He's
women is
tired.
talking way too much for me. So,
I'm an hour ahead of you, right?
are you?
No, no, she's on the East Coast. She's in
Oh
Ohio.
yeah, well, yeah,
It's 10
yeah. We're
o'clock
right.
here. It's
We're
10.
right next. We're
It's
right
10
next to each other.
o'clock. Yeah.
So you can
It's
give.
the
So you
single
can
who's
give.
behind the
So
time.
one of these weeks you can give us some history of Youngstown.
Who, me?
Yeah,
Okay, first of all, I got to find out what the heck that is.
Youngstown.
Well, what is it? You're making me look
Youngstown,
dumb. I
Ohio.
come
You
on
give
here
us the
looking like
history.
I know, and then
Yeah.
you ask me something
So
I don't know.
so tell me, sister. So sister Azima, who
Not me.
how did the Nottingham plantation burn down, sister Azima? They don't know how it's caught on fire.
I don't either. It was a miracle. It was a miracle.
We're gonna look that up now.
You,
Now I'm
you
gonna
know,
look it up.
if you look it up right now, you know what they got nerve to say?
What?
It was Black history there. No, it wasn't. It was nothing
Oh,
but Black trauma there. What the hell are you talking
right.
about? Black
Thank
history?
you. Thank you.
Turning it into a daggone, what is it? What they call them things? Them breakfast inns.
Oh,
I want
bed
to
and
eat breakfast
breakfast.
in the old plantation. We got some
Breakfast
sick
out of-
minds. Yeah, we gonna eat breakfast out of old plantation.
Oh, you're talking about that plantation that's burning. That's
Yeah,
Right now.
don't
Yeah. They don't know what's going on.
they don't know how it caught on fire.
Considering that nothing is on and it's empty and it's deserted, but it caught on fire. And wait, the best part is the fire department's been out twice and put the fire out. Definitely put it out. And it's back on fire.
back on fire again. I think there might be some ancestors saying, y'all time is up.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's an energy.
Be careful.
I really want to show you this. I really want to show you this before we go.
Okay, please
Okay,
show it.
great.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go way down on my page where I was studying. I want to show you this about federal rules and in fact that how there's nothing but okay, let me just go back. We look at this examples of federal rules that have been used to undermine the Constitution and that are void. The regulation that infringes on the right to travel, that's one. Because you don't have a license. Well, let's look at the definition of license. Did I send that to you?
No, you did not. Did you? Let me look. Let me double check.
Yeah, I did. Look at license, pull it up, and it says, I don't know what it says on yours because I'm not pulling up. I'm pulling up something different.
Okay,
You
I
see
got
it
you.
in orange? Okay.
I got you. Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes.
The definition of a license is this. In legal terms, a license is a legal permission granted by one party, which is the government, the licensor, to another, which is you, to engage in a specific activity or use of a certain right, property, or asset that would otherwise be illegal or unlawful. So you gotta, this is the witchcraft. This is the spell binding. Okay, so you're telling me if I actually travel across any amount of space, I'm breaking a law? How does sitting in a car or automobile, whatever you want to call it, what law is it breaking? It's not the constitutional law. It's not the universal law. That's why it's witchcraft. Because we obey it. And why do we obey it? Because they will molest you and take you to court. And sometimes they call these crimes.
Mm-hmm.
You could end up in jail for committing a crime, not against the law, but against a code, a statute, and a policy that is not protected by the United States Constitution. I kid you not. Okay, so now just give me 10 minutes and I promise to be done. Let's ponder a federal rule that have been used to undermine the Constitution and the will of the people. When I say the will of the people, I'm talking about the United States. And in hopes of undermining the American Indian Aborigines. Now I'm talking about America. And that word would be mandate. Click anywhere in your chat GBT or your on the internet and ask, is the word mandate in the Constitution? I'm just gonna ask y'all to do it, and the next time we come back, somebody put it up, yes or no. But here's what it says. Now, COVID, I should have known I was going there. The federal government issued several employment or workforce-based mandates that either directly require certain employers to receive COVID-19 vaccinations or direct certain employers to impose a vaccination or vaccination and testing requirements on their employees or staff. Now, if they don't like what we just said, I just got that off their own government page. You can tell them that, and I'll show you. The First Amendment violation, any rule that mandates speech or censor public opinion, that's against the law. Violating due process and rights to labor. They violated their right to work, which is what they sent here for, to serve. Violating with warrantless surveillance or search and seizures. Well, they do that all the time. So here's the deal. I want to show you this before we're gonna, because after that I go to the Northwest Ordinance and I'll bring that up next time. I want you to pull up this document that I sent you. It's called the Affidavit of Lawful Exemption.
There you go.
Okay. Let me pull it up. Okay, there we go. Hold on. I have to pull it up myself. This is a document written by our government because, you know, we, as Aborigines, we had to come out of the United States because, like I said, the Constitution says that we weren't even supposed to be in the United States under that jurisdiction in the first place. So we have members who have jobs that were told, if you don't take the vaccination or wear a mask, you out of here. They, of course, cried to me because I was the clan mother at that time, not the chief. So I said, okay, well, I'll write you a document. This is the document. They took this document and gave it to them. They didn't lose their job. They didn't have to wear a mask. And I'm going to read some of it to you. This is when you know the law and who you are. It's an affidavit of cultural law vaccination fraud. The Department of Protection and Council, which is us, is governed by the Council of Affairs for Naturally Occurring Autochthones, advocating for the Mississippian Nations of Aboriginal American people. And at that time, we were the Mississippian Nations, and now we're Confederacy, who are not under the jurisdiction of the United States, has a protection and council team of council members who rule, guide, and equip the American Aborigine with knowledge of their protected rights according to the law. Well, I'll be honest, I wrote this. The laws are written in the Great Law of Peace and in the United States Constitution, Article 1, Section 2, Clause 3, and excluding Indians is not taxed. I hope are you following me so far? I think you're able to see this. As it is defined in Bouvier's Constitutional Dictionary, and I tell everybody, if you want to know your constitutional rights, you should have this dictionary because it is adapted to the Constitution. The Aborigines of this country, it says right in there, Indians, the Aborigines of this country are so-called. Doesn't say the Native Americans of this country are so-called. So whereas the members of the Mississippian Nation are not to be enumerated or not to be forcibly subjugated to the jurisdiction of the United States Corporation. Once they read that top, they was like, here, you ain't got to do it because, we're going to sue you. Whereas also according to the American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, we gave them that. And whereas we affirmed the ADRIP, we gave them that. And by virtue of that right, we freely determine our juridical status. That means we follow our own laws. Therefore, we affirm that mandated vaccinations are an unlawful act contrary to our social, political, and cultural and natural inalienable existence. That being time immemorial, meaning, and this is their word, y'all, time immemorial. You know what that means? Look it up. It means we've been here so long that they can't even tell how long we've been here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our objections to such an all vaccination is within our natural right to continue to exist uninhibited as indigenous beings. And then I went down to Article 60, protections against blah, and furthermore, and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. And then they signed it, and then I signed it, and then they took it to their boss and called me and said, whoo, I'm not going to lose my job. I don't have to take a vaccination, and I'm not wearing a mask. I kid you not.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm done talking.
Sister Azima, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I enjoyed it. I learned a lot too.
Yeah, me too.
Well, Chief Mimi has us on a mission, you guys, to be prepared, to understand if mandate is definitely in the Constitution, how many times it was said, if it was said, and for us to continue to understand what is our Constitution, who is it applicable for, and who it isn't applicable for. And it's very important for us to know who we are. So that's the assignment for 2 weeks, to find out something about your lineage, which will not have you scared of the boogeyman, or it may make you scared of the boogeyman because you might find out some things that you don't want to find out. But with that, appreciate you guys in the chat for joining us. Appreciate Sister Azima and Chief Mimi for joining us again. And until next time, take care.